Hello, students. Today I'll begin with the explanation of Unit 3 of the essay Freedom by G.B. Shaw. Now, though this prodigious mass of humbug is meant to delude the enslaved class only, it ends in deluding the master class much more completely. Now, though this prodigious mass of humbug, he is talking about the diplomats or the hypocrites. He is saying that this mass of this group of diplomats, these diplomats and these hypocrites who are in large number, who are in big number, they are meant to delude. Delude means to misguide. Their sole purpose is to misguide the slave class, the slavery class. But what happens is that in the end, they conclude in deluding, in misleading or misguiding the master class much more completely as compared to the slave class. A gentleman whose mind has been formed at a preparatory school for the sons of gentlemen, followed by a public school and university course, is much more thoroughly taken in by the falsified history and dishonest political economy and snobbery taught in these places than any worker can possibly be, because the gentleman's education teaches him that he is a very fine fellow, superior to the common run of men, whose duty it is to brush his clothes, carry his parcels, and earn his income for him. And as he thoroughly agrees with his view of himself, he honestly believes that the system which has placed him in such an agreeable situation and done such justice to his merits is the best of all possible systems, and that he should shed his blood and yours to the last drop in its defense. So, quite a lengthy sentence this one is, it's a complex sentence. So, we'll take it bit by bit. A gentleman whose mind has been formed at a preparatory school for the sons of gentlemen. Okay, he's talking about now the elite class, and he says that a man who has been groomed up in an environment which is completely meant for gentlemen, for the elite class. So, what will happen? Right from the primary school, then the public school or the university, they are always groomed by the false history and the dishonest political economy and the snobbery that is taught to them in all these educational places, whether it is this primary school or the public school or the university. Everywhere they are taught about the snobbish social mannerism which they have to adopt, being from the elite class. Okay, because the gentleman's education teaches him. Now, what is a person from the elite class taught in the schools and the universities? This is what Shaw has mentioned here. He says that the education teaches him that he is a very fine fellow, superior to the common run of men, whose duty it is to brush his clothes, carry his parcels, and earn his income for him. So, right from the beginning, he is taught about the difference between the masters and the slaves. He is taught that he is from the master class, and how he is a very fine fellow, how he is superior to the common people, to the slave class, and what is the duty of the slave class? To brush his clothes, to carry his items, his parcels, and to do all his jobs, all his works on his behalf and bring money or income to him. And as he thoroughly agrees with this view of himself, now this particular individual who is being groomed in this kind of environment in schools and universities, he's completely molded in that manner that he readily agrees that yes, I am from the master class, I am the master of these slaves. He honestly believes that the system which has placed him in such an agreeable situation, he believes, and in a in an honest manner, he believes that this system which has given him an upper hand is a very good system and an agreeable system. And this system has done such justice to his merits, is the best of all possible systems. And this system, which has placed him in a very good position, and it has rightly done justice to his merits. This is the best system of the world. This is what a child who has been groomed, an individual who has been groomed in such an environment in schools and universities, how he has been brought up in a situation where he is always taught the difference between the masters and the slaves. He's always informed that how he is from the master class, and he has a dominating hand over the slaves who are meant to serve him. Excuse me. And that he should shed his blood and yours to the last drop in its defense. And it is also taught to him that he has to be very loyal to his class. And to prove his loyalty, to defend his own master class, he can go to any extreme limit, whether he has to shed his own blood or the blood of the slaves. He would go to any extent in order to defend his own position as a master. Next, Shaw says, but the great mass of our rack rented, underpaid, treated as inferiors, cast off on the dole workers cannot feel so sure about it as the gentleman. Now, he's talking about the difference between the masters and the slaves. On one hand, when we analyze that how the children or the people belonging to the master class are brought up, in what kind of environment they are brought up, that they readily agree to their position as a master. It is so easy for them to be convinced that yes, they are from the master class and they are meant to dominate the slaves. But this is not the same case with the labor class, the slaves or the workers. They cannot feel so assured about their position as the people from the elite class can. The facts are too harshly against it. Reality is totally against it. In hard times, such as we are now passing through, this disgust and despair sometimes lead them to kick over the traces, upset everything, and have to be rescued from more gangsterism by some Napoleonic genius who has a fancy about being an emperor and who has the courage and brains and energy to jump at the chance. Now, what he's talking about is that in the present difficult times, the adverse conditions that they are going through, these kinds of disgusting and hopeless conditions, they compel the slaves or the slave class to revolt. And what all they require is they need a kind of leadership, a leader like Napoleon, and who has this imagination or the fancy of becoming the ruler or the emperor. A person who has this leadership quality can save them from this condition, this suppressive condition of being subjugated to their masters. So only in under the leadership of a charismatic person like Napoleon, these slaves can ensure their liberty from the clutches of their masters. But the slaves who give 3 cheers for the emperor might just as well have made a cross on a British or American ballot paper as far as their freedom is concerned. Now, the slaves might succeed in getting a leader in form of a rebellious person, but these very slaves must have voted for an American or a British leader by casting their vote on the ballot papers, and thus ironically using their freedom in the form of right to vote by actually electing a wrong person as their emperor. So far, I have mentioned nothing but plain, natural, and historical facts. So Shaw says here that up till now in this essay, he has only discussed about the plain, natural, and historical facts. Now he will move ahead from these facts. I draw no conclusions, for that would lead me into controversy. He says that I won't jump to any kind of conclusions on the basis of these historical facts. I won't jump to any kind of conclusion because this would lead him into controversy. And controversy would not be fair when you cannot answer me back. So he says that if I, you know, introduce a kind of controversy by reaching to some kind of conclusion, it won't be fair because it is not possible for him to discuss over this controversy with his readers or the audiences. Okay. So, a controversy can be substantial and relevant only when there is some other party to discuss over it. But that is not possible here. I am never controversial over the wireless. So, when he is on the wireless, he is not controversial. He does not tend to be controversial, at least when he is on wireless. I do not even ask you to draw your own conclusions. He says that I won't even ask you to draw your own conclusion on the basis of the facts presented by him up till now in this essay. For you might draw some very dangerous ones unless you have the right sort of head for it. He says that if you don't have the same kind of thought process as Shaw has, then the reader or the audience might come to some dangerous conclusions. So, this he does not want. Therefore, he is not giving any kind of conclusive statement here because he does not want to land up in any kind of controversy. Always remember that though nobody likes to be called a slave, it does not follow that slavery is a bad thing. He says that nobody actually wants to be a slave, but this does not mean that slavery is altogether a bad thing. Great men like Aristotle have held that law and order and government would be impossible unless the persons the people have to obey are beautifully dressed and decorated, robed and uniformed, speaking with a special accent, traveling in first class carriages or the most expensive cars, or on best groomed and best bred horses, and never cleaning their own boots or doing anything for themselves that can possibly be done by ringing a bell and ordering some common person to do it. Now, in this long sentence, what Shaw is trying to establish is that slavery is not entirely a bad thing. It's why? Because he says that even great philosophers like Aristotle have held this opinion that there needs to be a demarcation, a class distinction in the society. Because until and unless we won't have these two groups of haves and have nots, of poor and rich, law and order and government would not function. Because if every individual will be on the same level, there won't be any kind of difference or disparity between them, then there won't be any use of law, order, and government. If all people are going to be equal, there won't be any existence for law, order, and government. So there needs to be a distinction. He says that until unless we have the two classes, on one hand the slaves, on the other hand the master class, who are beautifully dressed, who are ought to be in a uniform and well dressed up, who speak in a special accent, who travel in the first class carriages, in expensive cars, or on the best groomed and best bred horses, who never clean their own boots, who do nothing on their own, who are always on a lookout for a bell which they can ring and order somebody to do their common course. Okay. So, this kind of distinction is necessary if we want the existence of law, order, and government. And this means, of course, that they must be made very rich without any other obligation than to produce an impression of almost godlike superiority on the minds of common people. So, what is the sole duty of the rich people? To appear to be rich. Okay, they always have to carry that aura with them of being a rich person, so that they can maintain their godlike superiority on the uh, on the mindset of common people. In short, it is contended you must make men ignorant idolaters before they will become obedient workers and law abiding citizens. So, before you can make a person your slave, your subjugated person, or a law abiding citizen, what you need to do is you need, it is a fact that you must make men ignorant idolaters. They should worship you blindly. This is what the rich people are expected to do, to maintain their godlike figure, so that the slave class or the common man can worship them, blindly follow them. Okay. To prove this, we are reminded that although 9 out of 10 voters are common workers, it is with the greatest difficulty that a few of them can be persuaded to vote for members of their own class. And this is a fact. He says that uh, if we conduct an election, then out of 10 voters, 9 are going to vote against the person of their own class. Okay, it won't be possible, it won't be easy for them to vote for a person who is from the same class. When women were enfranchised, when women were given this right to vote and given the right to sit in parliament, the first use they made of their votes was to defeat all the women candidates who stood for the freedom of the workers and had given them years of devoted and distinguished service. Okay, so he is presenting a fact here. He says that when women were given the right to vote for the first time, and when they were given the permission to sit in the parliament, to get elected and sit in the parliament, what happened was that women outrightly rejected all the women candidates. They did not vote for the women candidates who were so selflessly working for them. They elected only one woman, a titled lady of great wealth and exceptionally fascinating personality. So they did not vote for the women candidate who were from their own class. What they did, they voted for a woman who was from the elite class, who had a very fascinating personality, attractive personality. So this is how the mindset of people is trained right from the beginning, and how this class distinction of masters and slaves, of the poor and rich, is executed in the society. Now, this, it is said, is human nature, and you cannot change human nature. So, it is a very well established fact that it is mostly believed that human nature cannot be changed. On the other hand, it is maintained that human nature is the easiest thing in the world to change if you catch it young enough. Okay, so he says that although it is not possible to change human nature, but it is at the same time maintained that human nature can only be changed if we try to change it at an early age. When people are quite young, only at that stage it is possible to change their nature. And that the idolatry of the slave class and the arrogance of the master class are themselves entirely artificial products of education and of a propaganda that plays upon our infants long before they have left their cradles. So he says that people are not responsible for what is happening in society. It is our system, whether it is the education system or the political system, it is entirely the fault of the system, wherein children are taught right from the early stage that they are from the slave class or from the master class. So, the way the mind is trained, the way the system works, it is due to this working of this the society or the social system or the education system, that there is a difference between the rich and the poor, between the masters and the slaves. An opposite mentality could, it is argued, be produced by a contrary education and propaganda. He says that if the mind is trained in an opposite manner, wherein every child is taught that all humans are equal, there is no distinction of class, there is no distinction of poor and rich, or the slaves and the masters, or the haves and the have nots, then only is it possible to maintain a kind of parity and harmony in society. You can turn the point over in your mind for yourself. Do not let me prejudice you one way or the other. Now he says that it is up to you, it is up to the readers how you want to look at these things. He won't, you know, he won't let us or compel us to think in one direction or the other. He has given us an open ended statement wherein we can decide where we want to go, which opinion we want to follow. The practical question at the bottom of it all is how the income of the whole country can best be distributed from day to day. Now he says that how is it possible to maintain a kind of equality by equal distribution of income? This is the underlying question. This is the underlying or the practical question which is facing us at present. If the earth if the earth is cultivated agriculturally in vast farms with motor plows and chemical fertilizers, and industrially in huge electrified factories full of machinery that a girl can handle, the product may be so great that an equal distribution of it would provide enough to give the unskilled laborers as much as managers and the men of the scientific staff. So he says that if women are given the charge of production, then we can hope that there might be some kind of equal distribution of income. There won't be any difference between the scientific staff and the laborers. But do not forget that when you hear tales of modern machinery enabling one girl to produce as much as 1,000 men could produce in the reign of good Queen Anne, that this marvelous increase included things like needles and steel pens and matches, which we can neither eat nor drink nor wear. Now he says that if we look at this condition where women are the producers, one practical fact emerges. And he says that the fact is that what all women produce is needles, steel pens, matches. Now these things, these objects we cannot eat or drink. Okay, very young children will eat needles and matches eagerly. Out of curiosity, a child might eat needle or match or matches, but the diet is not a nourishing one. So, in a very humorous point, he says that this diet of needles and matches is probably not a good one. It is not a healthy diet. And though we can now cultivate the sky as well as the earth by drawing nitrogen from it to increase and improve the quality of our grass and consequently of our cattle and the milk and butter and eggs, nature may have tricks up her sleeves to check us if the chemists exploit her too greedily. Now he has ended this unit on an entirely different kind of note. He says that we human beings have cultivated not only the earth but also the sky. So our ambitions are so high that we have not left any part of the nature uncultivated. Okay, our desires have reached the sky. We are actually polluting the entire environment, the entire nature, but we are not aware of the fact that nature can be tricky with us. If we go on exploiting nature the way we are doing at present, then nature can play her own tricks upon us for exploiting her. Nature can punish us for its exploitation. If we go on increasing our greed and go on exploiting nature, then nature will definitely take revenge on us for this exploitation. So students, with this we come to the end of Unit 3. That's all for the explanation of Unit 3 for today. Thank you.